On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, 1 year later, the Brandon Ingram thing, well, it's working out pretty all right, I'd say.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network in the land. It is Friday, February the 6th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors now for 12 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. As always, come hang out. Certainly, now that the deadline's passed, there will be no talk of fake trades or off-season machinations between now and the end of the season. It's purely about the hoops, right? Come join our listener community. They definitely will not be talking about fake trades at all in the next couple of months. Good luck. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win ahead of this Sunday's big game. And on today's show, we are digging into the Toronto Raptors taking down the Chicago Bulls 123-107 in a game where Brandon Ingram was very, very good. We'll get into that in the sort of 1 year experience of Brandon Ingram since the Raptors acquired him at last year's trade deadline. We'll talk about Mamu, who continues to just be an absolute force off the bench for the Raptors and why it simply has to be a priority to keep this guy around come summertime. We've also got the good, the bad, the as we always do after a Raptors basketball game. But let's start with Brandon Ingram in a game where we'll get into this a little bit later. Raptors were kind of sleepy. It was just like the arena seemed pretty quiet. It was sort of post-trade deadline weirdness. It was who the hell plays for the Chicago Bulls? Oh, it's Jaden Ivey and Fernie Simons in the backcourt. Okay, cool. That's normal. Strange basketball game. Always a bit of a strange vibe on deadline day just because of all of the sort of build up to 3 p.m. and then the big exhale and then, oh, there's basketball games tonight after people's livelihoods were hanging in the balance via trades. But the Raptors played and they got it done. It was a classic game where, they were a 5-minute stretch of trying away from beating the Bulls at any time. Maybe took a little long to get there, but all told, this one really is kind of about Brandon Ingram. He was awesome. 20 points in the first half, finishes with 33, 6 and 6. 12 of 20 shooting, 5 of 9 from downtown. Love Brandon Ingram taking 9 threes. You'll take that all day long. And I think it was, there was some pretty good poeticism to Brandon Ingram going off on the 1-year anniversary of the Raptors picking him up in a win that sees the Raptors now eclipse their win total from last year with well over 2 months left to go in the season. Just a nice, tidy bit of narrative there written by the NBA writers. And I think, sort of reflecting now upon the Ingram trade a year ago, the first year of him being with the franchise, I think it's gone about as perfectly as anyone could have possibly hoped for when they made the trade. And I think last night was a great example of what he provides for them, but he's done it in all kinds of different ways, right? And look, the contract at the time when the Raptors extended him very quickly drew its critics at the moment. I'm sure it still has some critics now for people who think about contracts over the actual basketball all the time. To each their own, not trying to yuck your yum, but, there's actual basketball to be played as well. And I think what the basketball has been from Brandon Ingram has been largely very awesome. And look, my reservation at the time when they made the trade, and I talked myself into it pretty quickly. I was pretty against it before. Seeing the cost, I was like, okay, that's not so bad. And then within a couple of weeks, I'd kind of fully talked myself into, oh yeah, this can work. And I think a lot of that was sort of a belief in the culture of the Raptors and Darko Rajakovic and just sort of the way they could elicit the buy-in they'd need from Ingram and the other guys on the team to adapt to Ingram. And, that was my reservation at the time was, will this fit? Will Ingram be able to shift his shot chart a bit, take more threes, be okay working away from the ball a little bit more? And he's just kind of done all of that beautifully while also becoming, I think, probably the best version of a defender he's ever been in his career. The help side rim protection, the hands, the deflections, like he's just engaged. He's on the string, and he's been a delight to watch defensively over the last couple of months here after a bit of a rough start. And so altogether, he's just been like a very helpful, like competence providing player to the Raptors. And the way he's kind of avoided the moments where he could kind of commandeer things with an offense. Yeah, there have been times where they do something. Brandon offense has been a bit of a crutch for the Raptors, in crunch time in particular. I kind of chalk that more up to the team and coaching as opposed to Ingram saying, it's Brandon time now, give me the ball. Like, I think they're just kind of trying to draw stuff up to get him the ball in those situations more than anything else. But overall, I mean, he has adapted, right? Career low usage, at least career low since his time with the Lakers. Lowest usage, since before he joined the Pelicans way back in 2019. He, of course, has taken more threes, 5 threes a game. It's a little off where you'd like him. Maybe 1.5 more a game would be nice, but it's more threes than he was taking during most of his years with the Pelicans as well. And again, he's done it all while also improving as a defensive player. He's just been, I think, kind of an optimized version of Brandon Ingram, the kind of Brandon Ingram who, like, isn't the best player on a great team or anything like that, but can be a very good player on a very good team, which is what the Raptors were theoretically hoping for when they traded for him. And like, he has, as the case with the entire team, he's not a perfect basketball player. There have been struggles with playmaking. The turnovers have been kind of a bugaboo for him this season. Last night, I thought, was a very nice playmaking game for him. He made some nice pick and roll reads. He made like a very slick pass in the first half to Collin Murray-Boyles on the roll for a dunk. And I think it might have been the first time, anecdotally speaking, all year that Ingram has looked for and found Collin Murray-Boyles on the roll. That's been kind of an area of his game where he's kind of gotten some tunnel vision when he gets into that sort of mid-post area. After he takes the screen and gets downhill, he often just kind of gets the pull-up going, and that's fine. Maybe he'll pass because he sees a double team to the weak side or whatever. He's been not great at finding those roll men, but all told, it has been, I think, a generally positive experience with Brandon Ingram having the ball in his hands. And the numbers kind of bear that out too. I was kind of digging into some synergy stuff today just to kind of see, hey, how has he come along as a pick and roll ball handler? Synergy has him as a 66th percentile pick and roll ball handler, including passes. Obviously, that bakes in his shots, passes to other guys, one pass away. That's, again, perfectly competent, totally fine. 72nd percentile in pick and rolls when the defense commits, which in synergy parlance refers to, the defense switching, a hedge, a soft double, any way in which they kind of change up their coverage because they're spooked by a guy outside of like a hard double team. And in those situations, again, 72nd percentile, like, top third of the league in efficiency when he sees extra attention, when the defense has to do something because he has bended it to his will. That's very encouraging. He's been very good on post-ups and passing out of hard doubles and post-ups. He hasn't been great getting, passing out of traps in the pick and roll. He's only been trapped 17 times. The Raptors have scored 6 points on those possessions. Very tiny, tiny sample, hard to say anything. But like, that's the stuff when you get to the playoffs that'll be really tested, right? Can he make those reads when he sees a double? Can he avoid turning it over? Can he find the next guy swiftly and kind of keep the possession moving and take advantage of the attention that he draws? These will all be things that get tested in the pressure cooker of the playoffs. But all told, like, he has just helped raise the floor of this team so much. The half-court offense still not incredible, but they're like 15th in the league, something right around there, way beyond where it used to be, even with the struggles of the last couple months. They were incredible to start the season. He was hitting every single mid-ranger, which helped. But all told, like, again, he's just raised the floor and just brought a level of competence to this team that they sorely, sorely needed. And his value, I think, has just come from not taking anything off the table, not being necessarily bad at anything, right? He's not incredible at anything, but he's not bad anywhere. When it comes to basically every single play type, more of the synergy data, pick and rolls, spot ups, ISOs, off screens, dribble handoffs, he basically ranks anywhere between league average and very good in the synergy percentile ranks in all of those sort of core play types. Like, that's great. Like, this is, again, a baseline level of incompetence, sort of an insurance when Darko ball fizzles out that he's provided that has just been so crucial. And it's been really fun to watch him come into his own. I think he's also been a big part of why the team feels like they like each other so much. He seems like just like a good dude to have around. People respect him. He's not like this sort of big walking ego in the room because he's got all these accolades from his previous time, playing as more of a sort of central player. It's been really great to see the way he's just kind of fully immersed himself in the Raptors. They have welcomed him in. Scottie Barnes has adapted and sort of taken his game to the next level because Ingram is there to help take some of the burden off. He's just a good player who the Raptors are happy to have and lucky to have. And I think, a year out from that trade now, it looks like an absolute home run. And we'll see where it goes. Next year, in theory, could be the final year of his contract. He's got the player option for $40 million the year after next year. We'll see what happens there. But I think that there seems to be a liking of each other on both sides of this thing too. And this very well could be something that they kind of draw even further into the future as a nice pairing with Scottie Barnes. They probably need some more high level creation to really take off. That's not Ingram's fault. He's given them that baseline floor. There's some other moves they can, hope to sort of peruse and make and poke around for in the summer year ahead. But for now, it's really nice to have Brandon Ingram on the team, and he has been such a huge reason why they are 31-22, more wins than last season. That's a delight. Another guy who has really helped them win a lot more games this year than last season is Mamu, who, again, last night off the bench was just awesome. And in light of the Raptors just kind of not doing a whole lot of the trade deadline and kicking a lot of decision making to the summer, I think it's pretty clear. The list of their priorities needs to start with keeping Mamu around. We'll get into that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash, and this season it's heating up. The trade deadline is passed, and DoorDash is a way of keeping fans in their bag the whole way through the NBA season. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights when your team stresses you out. Don't worry, DoorDash can become your post-game therapy. I love to order a little snacky poo for myself late in the evening because I'm a little treat boy. Those late night interviews hit and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you are showing up prepared and bringing something to the party as well. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag on an order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Today's show is also brought to you by Quo, which is simply the thing you got to be using if you run a business and you want to have communications that are fully integrated and on point. It's a great time as the year sort of continues to be very early on in the early days. Maybe you're still getting around on some New Year's resolutions. Maybe one of those resolutions was to improve your internal communications at work, and Quo can do that. Quo, spelled Quo, is the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with your customers. I've said it before. I'm someone who I call the guy to get helped out a lot at my house because I'm not terribly handy. And if I call the guy, no one answers, I'm just going to call the next guy. Whereas if you are the guy and you have a business phone number where all of your employees and people who work for you can be on the same page and get those messages, you're not going to lose me to the next guy. I will just give you my business. That's a lovely thing, ain't it? And works right from your phone or computer. And you can keep your existing number, which is a big deal too, as well. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedInNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedInNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Go check it out. Back at it here on your Friday edition of the show, and we'll get to Mamu in a sec, but just a reminder, the Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club is open for you to sign on up. $5 a month, $50 for the year gets you ad-free episodes of the show and access to a Locked On Discord, which I think is going to be a ton of fun during the Olympics. We're going to have all kinds of hot talk about figure skating and luge and ice dance and everything else that goes on at the Olympics in there with people from the entire Locked On community, listeners of the network worldwide. It's very cool and fun. We'd love to see you over there. All you got to do is sign up. And right now, for one more day, use the code DEADLINE at checkout, and you'll get a free month on us to sign it up and test out the Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club. Get me ad-free every single day, baby. Okay. Mamu, he is just the best. Another really great game for Mamu off the bench last night. 17 points, 4 of 6 from downtown, 5 boards, an assist, 3 steals, and a block. He continues to be just way beyond my wildest expectations as a defensive player. He's not incredible, but he's more than passable, and he's been, I think, very good as a switch defender, good moving in space. He's just been so good, the total package as a bench player. And I think for me, watching what he did again last night, it's been a recurring trend, him just being so bloody excellent, him being a picture-perfect fit with Scottie Barnes, with Collin Murray-Boyles, with Brandon Ingram. Like, he's got a credible case for 6th man of the year. He's been that impactful. The underlying numbers when he's on the floor are incredible. And I think it really does kind of hammer home for a team that yesterday had a quiet deadline and is going to have some stuff to sort out this summer. I think it's pretty clear that if it's not their top priority, it's one of the top one or two. Keeping Mamu around long term for the life of Scottie Barnes' contract is going to be an incredibly important thing for the Raptors to try and do. Like, it's nice to think, oh, well, you got Mamu as a minimum guy. You can always just go find the next Mamu as the next minimum guy. But like guys like Mamu don't grow on trees. And, just because he was undervalued coming into this year doesn't mean there's going to be a similar player similarly undervalued coming into the market again this summer. It's just not an easy thing to find the mix of skills that Mamu brings to the table. And again, the fact that he's held up as a defensive player, which I think was the big question mark for him, has been just a huge game changer for his total value as a player. And like, I think you have to go to pretty much any length you need to try to get to the full mid-level exception that's available to you by cutting some money, however it takes, whatever it takes to do that, to keep Mamu around. Look, there might be a team out there with cap space that throws more than the mid-level at him. I don't quite see that. We'll get into that in a second here and why this week kind of makes it easier for the Raptors to avoid that doomsday scenario. But I think if you're the Raptors, like, they can't quite get to the full mid-level exception right now as their books are set up. I think they got to find a way to do it because Mamu was just really, really important to optimizing the most important player on this team, who is Scottie Barnes. And I think the second most important player on this team going forward, who is Collin Murray-Boyles. He's a perfect fit with both of them. And I really think that, whatever it is this summer, whether it's moving on from Grady Dick and finding a way to dump his salary, whether it's turning RJ Barrett into a cheaper player or a couple of players who combine to be cheaper, whether it's like the nuclear option of like stretching Jakob Poeltl if no team will take on his salary, though I do think you might be able to find a taker. We talked about the Grizzlies. I think the odds that the Grizzlies could be a Poeltl team in the summer, very high if compared to other teams around the league. Maybe you give them a call. There's some other teams that might be able to take on some money that are in the tank. But I digress. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. And I think there has to be a will for the Raptors to try to keep Mamu this summer. He's just too important to what they're doing and just too valuable a player type, specifically, again, with Scottie Barnes and Collin Murray-Boyles as two key players on this team. Just looking at the numbers, all Mamu plus Scottie Barnes lineups this season, a plus 8.8 net rating, 71st percentile offense, better than 117 offensive rating, 91st percentile defense. They've been an absolute studly defensive crew anytime those two guys are on the floor. And that's across more than 1,300 possessions. Like, it's not a tiny sample. They've just found a dude who's a hand in glove fit with Scottie Barnes. And as I've said for years now, every single decision this team makes has to be made through the lens of, does this work with Scottie Barnes? Does this improve the situation around Scottie Barnes? And Mamu so obviously does that I think you have to move heaven and earth this summer if that's what it takes to ensure you have enough money to give him a competitive offer to stick around. It might be easier than it was, before this week to go and actually do that, which is an encouraging thing. A lot of the cap space around the league this week was kind of evaporated with big trades. The Washington Wizards, they got Anthony Davis to go along with Trae Young. Their cap space is pooched. The Utah Jazz just got $50 million worth of Jaren Jackson Jr. Their cap space gone. They're not going to be a player in free agency. And then you're looking at a lot of very bad teams that have cap space. You're looking at the Brooklyn Nets, the Grizzlies, the Bulls. Like, if I'm Mamu, yes, maybe you can get a bag from those teams. I think those teams are less likely to go and give a bag to a sixth man because that's just not where they are in their win cycle right now. And they're probably more inclined to take on bad contracts, Jakob Poeltl maybe, to, get assets and do that going forward, as opposed to signing players outright with their cap space. That's typically how these tanking teams operate these days. And then you're looking at basically one team that I think lurks as a real cap space threat, and that's the Lakers. And look, Mamu would be a great fit offensively with both Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. There's no doubt about that. But if I'm the Lakers, I think they're probably looking to prioritize defense, rebounding, connective tissue type guys who provide some defensive infrastructure around Reeves and Luka. And so I'm not sure they're going to be going and using a very valuable asset, which is their cap space, to go and give Mamu more than what his probable market value is going to be. And so they're always there. The Lakers are the Lakers. I think they might just kind of get caught up star hunting this summer, as the Lakers are want to do, and maybe they just kind of just don't pursue Mamu at all. They're the one team that, in theory, I think could do this. Obviously, teams can open up cap space. It happens all the time, but there's not a lot of cap space around the league, and so I think you're looking at the mid-level exception being where Mamu comes in. And look, ultimately, like with the way things have gone this season, with the way the Raptors, I think now know better than anybody how valuable Mamu is. I think they should very much be inclined to try to be competitive as possible with Mamu. And if they are, I think Mamu, who I think really likes playing for Darko, really has enjoyed his time playing here in Toronto, will have a pretty major role, even if he's not a starter. Like he's going to get to play heavy minutes, compete for sixth man of the year, play closing minutes, perhaps even going forward next to Scottie, next to CMB. Like, I think the Raptors have all the reason in the world to try to give Mamu what he's going to want. And I think Mamu, all things being equal, is pretty inclined to want to stick around here too. And so, like, you got to capitalize on this amazing find that is Mamu, right? And they're a little hamstrung because of the lack of bird rights. This is just the way things go with minimum guys. It's tough to do. We saw this with Bruce Brown on the championship Nuggets as well. There's not an Indiana Pacers out there ready to pay Bruce Brown money to Mamu this summer. I just don't see it at all. And so, yeah, it's like you have it here. You have the chance to keep Mamu around, pair him with Scottie Barnes over the life of Scottie's really good 25% max contract. I think you got to find a way to do it because he's just been too damn valuable and too awesome and just so fun. Just like one of the most fun single season Raptors I can recall so far. It would be a shame if he was only a single season Raptor because he's such an exemplary fit with the guys who matter most on this team. We'll come back on the other side. We'll close things out with the good, the bad, and the from the game that was against the Chicago Bulls and wrap things up. We'll have a bonus good as well, a pensive good, if you will, regarding some injury news of a certain Toronto Raptors big man. We'll get to that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get into the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone has been waiting for. And if you're someone who likes to bet on the silly things like who will win the coin flip? Will there be a safety in the game? What color will the Gatorade be? How long will the halftime show go over time? Whatever it is, you can go and find those fun little props around the Super Bowl. The little stupid things that make the Super Bowl such fun over at FanDuel. And it's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, you can just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if that bet wins. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, this season is over. Last call on football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60, which I'm sure will be a party. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Wrapping things up here on your Friday edition of the pod, sending you off into your weekend. Raptors Pacers on Sunday. You'll have the postcast with Zolfi and Dwayne after that. If you want to check that out Sunday afternoon, we'll be back again with a regular show on Monday, of course. And we look ahead to the stretch run, which is very fun. The good, the bad, and the is where we're going now. It's the way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game. Thing I liked, thing I didn't like. This got me a little bit intrigued from the latest in Raptors hoops. And the good for me, Collin Murray-Boyles just very quietly and casually being extremely good once again, wonderfully efficient, killing it on the pick and roll, kind of learning in real time. I was like, just 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how Murray-Boyles was kind of not doing a lot to make himself a target as a pick and roll guy, how he was not looking at the rim nearly enough. Not a problem at all last night. Those issues of not looking at the rim, of making those sort of skittish kick out passes when there's seemingly daylight for him to go up and dunk it, not a problem anymore. Seems to have learned. I think he talked about it even on the halftime interview with Blake Murphy last night about how, I figured it out. Like, it's just going up and dunking, pretty helpful. And also, I just love him dunking, even though it very clearly hurts his thumb every single time he does it. That's a guy I want in my shop who is doing self-harm in the name of yams, a king. Gerald Green once lost a finger from dunking too hard. There is no excuse if your hand hurts to not still be dunking, because dunking is a privilege for the talls that they should be taking advantage of at all times. And really love that Collin Murray-Boyles just keep on doing them yams, even though his hand clearly hurts. Hopefully it doesn't hurt him more. I would guess if he's playing, there's not like a real chance of him re-aggravating. It's more just a pain tolerance thing. And if the pain tolerance is fine and high enough that you can still dunk whilst it hurts you, very cool stuff to me. A bonus pensive good. Jakob Poeltl soon before the game yesterday. Darko Rajakovic saying that, hey, he's ramping up well, seems to be responding well to said ramp up, and the Raptors are hopeful he can return perhaps even before the All-Star break, which is like next weekend, by the way. There's not a whole lot of games between now and All-Star. That's very exciting. Is it next weekend, the weekend after? Who knows? But look, Jakob Poeltl getting back on the floor, really great. And what a luxury it is now to have all these different options in the front court where you don't have to lean on Poeltl to play 35 minutes a night for you. You can play him 25 minutes a night, ease him back in, and know you have Murray-Boyles and Mamu as two different looks at that spot. I think it just gives them so many different ways to play. It makes them more sort of diverse in the types of lineups they can throw out there. Having Poeltl back would be a really big deal. Getting him on the floor would be a really big deal, whether it's just to see that he can actually, in fact, play basketball, or if it is kind of, hey, everyone out there who might be interested in Poeltl this summer, if we're trying to move off that contract, like he can play. He's a guy. He's out there. He's healthy. And it's, good all around to hopefully have, Jakob Poeltl back very, very soon. The bad, just a pretty sleepy effort from the Raptors against the Bulls, if we're being real. Like, I didn't dive too far into the X's and O's of Raptors against the weirdo guard-heavy Bulls because, boy, oh boy, there was a lot of Mac McClung in this game. Nice they pulled it out. It was a game that they really, if they had lost, it would have been a disaster. It never felt like it was terribly in doubt. Yeah, the Bulls, I think, tied it at one point at like 76 in the third quarter, but thankfully the Raptors just got real professional and closed things out. Again, it was one of those games where they were a short stretch of giving a damn away from winning by double digits, and that's exactly what happened. Very casually closed out the fourth quarter, but took a little longer to get to that stretch of a few minutes of trying than you'd like. And look, there are going to be a lot of games like this down the stretch. Like, by my count, with now the sort of post-deadline dust settled and the tank derby seemingly very much in full effect, the Raptors have a lot of games left against teams that are either tanking aggressively or like adjacent to tanking aggressively. You got the Pacers, who have all the reason in the world now to try to be as bad as possible between now and the end of the season because they have that top 4 protection on the pick they sent out for Ivica Zubac yesterday in a trade I quite like for them, just in terms of what next year's team is going to look like. But they probably want to get that top 4 pick to add to their team. If it's 5 through 9, it goes to the Clippers. So the Pacers, they're going to be really, really stinky, one would think, down the stretch, and probably resting Pascal a bunch. And probably Zubac a bunch too. They play the Bulls 2 more times. The Bulls are terrible, obviously. They're awful. The Bucks, they might be shutting down Giannis. They have them once more on the schedule. The Wizards are on the schedule. I would imagine we're not going to see a whole lot of Trae Young plus Anthony Davis pick and roll getting to roll out there this year. They're both in the Brandon Ingram zone from last year, one would think. They get the Mavericks, who, maybe are sort of trying, but also this is a good year for them to tank because I don't think they have their picks going forward. They got the Pelicans twice. The Pelicans are god-awful. They have the Jazz, who, yes, they got Jaren Jackson Jr., but they also have a top 8 protection on their pick. They're going to seemingly want to try to tank as hard as possible. They might Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson, even though Jaren Jackson seems ostensibly healthy. They have the Clippers, who just traded James Harden. Who knows when Darius Garland's going to play? And they're going to be rolling out a lot of Yannick Conan-Niederhauser. They're not trying to win games for the rest of the year. They have the Kings still, the Grizzlies, the Nets in their final game of the season. 13 of the Raptors' remaining 29 games are against these teams. There are going to be a lot of games where you just can't get sleepy because every single win is going to matter in this very jumbled up Eastern Conference. And they should win all of those games. If you take yourself seriously, you should win every single one of those games against those teams that are likely trying to lose. And hopefully they do, and they play a little less sleepy than they did on Thursday. Back-to-back, all that stuff, and it was a weird one that they ultimately won with ease. But just to note, there are going to be more games like this at a very, very tanky end of the season in the NBA. Last 3 weeks, since January 15th, the Toronto Raptors rank 11th in the league in three-point percentage. Woo! Hang the banner, baby. 36.8%. They are just like a normal, a bit below average three-point shooting team. I believe this. It's in there. They have it. You get a little bit of regressing to the mean from Emmanuel Quickley and Brandon Ingram of late. Even Grady Dick If I told you this, you might not believe it, but in these last 3 weeks, nearly 37% from three for Grady Dick. That's a big deal. Look, they're not a great shooting team. They're a pretty low volume team. They're 24th in the league in volume in that time. I think 24th on the season as well. They don't take a ton of threes, but if you can be an accurate 3-point shooting team that doesn't take a ton, it's pretty helpful. And, they go 41% last night, 14 to 34. That's nice to see. They play the possession game enough. They, control turnovers enough. They play in transition enough. They game the math enough. They don't have to be the leading team in 3-point percentage in attempts to be a successful team. They're good defense, all this stuff, but they just got to be normal, and encouraging to say the least that they've kind of righted the ship a little bit on the 3-point slump they were in for a good long month there. And again, 3-point shooting, variable. There's ups and downs. They will surely have another cold spell at some point in the next 29 games, but hopefully it's more of a sort of in the middle of the extremes that they've had. And again, there's some shooting talent here that just wasn't really performing up to the level. Ingram and IQ now both 37-ish or more percent. It's good stuff. Even after IQ was 3 of 11 last night from deep. Nice taking 11 threes, though. Happy to see that. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for following, rocking with the show, subscribing, all the stuff that you do to help support the show and make it more popular to the people out there. You can, on the Instagram, you can follow. I put clips and stuff up there, pregame clips and stuff like that, postgame thoughts from my chair or the train. Sometimes I've been a little slacking on those lately. The West Coast trip kind of ruined that for me. I'll get back to it here down the stretch. And of course, you can support the show by just, being here every day and listening and telling a friend. Tell a friend, like, hey, you like the Raptors? How about this podcast? That's a nice thing you can do as well to help support me. You can also join the Everydayer Club, $5 a month, $50 for the year, gets you ad-free episodes of the show every single day, plus some more fun perks, and you get a month free using the code DEADLINE right now. Link for that in the description of the podcast. Join the Discord, link also down there, 100% free to join our Raptors Discord. The Locked On Network Discord is tied to the Everydayer Club. That's also lots of fun, too, if you want extra space to talk about sports with your pals. And we'll leave it there. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll talk to you Monday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. I just punched my computer, and I missed the shot. There we go.